I'm in Alabama visiting a ship with the same name. The USS Alabama is a World War II battleship. A bunch of school kids raised $100,000 back in the early 1960s, which is the equivalent of about $1 million today. With that money, they were able to bring this ship to Alabama from Washington State. During World War II, she was painted in camouflage. Then she was painted solid blue so the Japanese planes couldn't see her, and then painted gray. This is one of the reasons they say that ships are referred to as a she. They need plenty of paint to look good. Also, there's always a gang of men around, and it's not the initial expense that will break a man, but the upkeep. It took 3,000 men and women in Norfolk, Virginia to build this ship, and after she was launched, the Mighty A was sent up to the North Atlantic, where they brought supplies to Russia for almost a year in the freezing cold and ice. The USS Alabama was also used as a decoy to make the Germans think that Norway was about to be invaded, when in fact Sicily was the real Allied target. Then the Alabama left the extreme cold of the Arctic and sailed through the Panama Canal into the tropical South Pacific. And I know from my uncles who served in the Pacific Theater that being in the jungle was its own special hell on earth. I wonder which was worse, the sub-zero conditions or the tropical heat. It's like a beautiful piece of architecture.
Of course, you've got to keep a home clean, and here are some of my boys doing homework. To make the varsity on this ship, you have to be a member of the scrub team.
Receiving mail was critical for sailors' morale. Outgoing mail was read and censored so that loose lips didn't sink ships.
The mail room is the most popular spot in the ship. By this time, most of the crew have learned that the only way to earn their letter is to write one.
According to my grandmother, my uncle would write letters that said, "I saw Uncle Phil today," and that meant he was in the Philippines. It got past the censors. He served on the USS Miami. This is the locker of a Marine sergeant. Everything had to be in a certain place, and these lockers were inspected often. This is the quarters of the guy in charge of showing movies. They slept where they worked. There's some movie reels. They set up a screen on deck. Sometimes they had to watch the same movies over and over again because they were out at sea and couldn't get new ones. This ship had 4 different kinds of guns.
It takes 79 men to operate this turret and its 3 guns. Incidentally, this is a 3-gun turret, not a triple-gun turret. That means each gun can elevate independently of the others.
The kitchen on a ship is called a galley. They served 7,500 meals a day to 2,500 men. The ship had its own butcher shop. If beef stew was on the menu, they needed 1,000 pounds of meat, and the ship had a bakery where they baked over 500 loaves of bread a day.
Each time we prepared coffee was 4 coppers like this, each containing 80 gallons, and for a total of 320 gallons. On Thanksgiving and Christmas, I remember this day, I worked as a night cook, and I prepared 2,000 pounds of turkey per meal.
On the other side of the galley here, they had a bakery shop. They baked their own bread. They baked biscuits for breakfast a lot of times. And you always had bread that was baked here because you had no other way of getting it. You was in a storm, in a typhoon in 1944. You set your tray down, but you have to hold the table and hold your thumb in your tray to keep your tray from sliding all over and losing everything you got. And you'll rock back and forth as you eat. As you go back, and as you come back, you'll take another bite. You had to get in sequence with the roll of the ship.
They even had an ice cream shop. I guess things like that were good for morale.
At the ice cream fountain, the star attraction is the Big Dipper, and the crew seems to appreciate it.
The gun captain would give me command to commence firing, and I would mash the pedal.
These smaller guns were for shooting down planes. The Alabama was involved in many battles, but they lost no crew member to enemy fire. Let's look inside this big gun turret.
The gunner's mate, second class on USS Alabama, mine too, a 5-inch 38. It started in the lower ammunition room where all the ammunition was stored. And when they needed ammunition up in the upper handling room below the gun mounts, they would send them up by conveyor belts.
This ship not only had 3 dental officers, but they also had an oral surgeon.
In another medical compartment, our eye, ear, nose, and throat specialist looks a little mysterious himself. Skilled Navy doctors are on board with modern surgical equipment to handle any emergency in the operating room.
I had tonsillitis, and they performed a tonsillectomy on me here in this sick bay. But you didn't have no pretty nurses. All you had was these old pharmacist mates.
Here's the ship's operating room. An isolation ward. We hear about cruise ships where everyone on the ship gets sick because of its close quarters, so I can imagine it would be the same here, and it would put an important warship out of commission when it was needed. This area is called the sick bay, and they also treated sailors from smaller ships that didn't have these facilities. The ship's store looks like cigarettes were a staple, 5 cents a pack.
There's a ship's service where you can buy everything from watches to soap. Not as big as the corner drugstore, but just as well supplied for Navy needs.
The temporary brig for minor offenses like fighting. The average age on the ship was 21 years old, and that can be an unruly age. Their bunks are hanging from chains, so if the water was rough, they must have swung around all night. Yikes! I get motion sick in a rocking chair. This is the engine room.
We had 600 pounds of steam, superheated, 750 degrees. The steam is forced right into the turbines. If one of these steam lines broke, if you got hit by a plane or a bomb or something, you never got out of the engine room. It cut you right in half. This is your ahead throttle. You open that up when you want steam. You get steam from #1 boiler room. And if you want to go astern, if you want to go backwards, you have to shut this throttle off and open this one to go astern, to go back.
Now I'm on the bridge of the ship.
Engine order telegraph gave orders to the engine room to back or go forward. This was where you steered from. These are the compass repeaters from the central station, the main compass below.
These are the smallest of the gun types on this ship.
So they get up in them clouds where you couldn't see them and dive down on you.
This is the tool room.
Mechanical spare parts for almost any emergency line the shelves of this shop, including pipe fittings, bolts, shackles, and grinding stones.
What is a flag plot?
And this was the Admiral's plotting room. They got the same information that the bridge got when he was on board. These were his plotting tables. They had 3 of them. During battle, while they could plot planes or ships or whatever they're going on.
I was a seaman first class in the L Division, which was the lookout division of the Alabama. Our station was up there, right below the searchlight platform. You had this first-class view of everything going on. I've always seen ships massed on the horizon, you look for airplanes.
Somebody had to keep those uniforms pressed.
Cleanliness is a personal thing, too, and we hold inspections often enough to keep the ship and her crew in trim.
The tailor shop.
In this shop are the men who keep the Navy from coming apart at the seams. A skillful use of needle and thread, applied with modern sewing machines, keeps uniforms as good as new.
This ship earned 9 battle stars and even survived a typhoon. It was interesting to see what the daily lives were like for sailors on a battleship, and to think about my uncles that served in World War II.
This is my copy of the USS Alabama War Diary, and on August 15, 1945, I sat at this desk and wrote this little note. It says, "Today, Wednesday, August 15, 1945, the Japanese have accepted our surrender terms. I can't express the happiness and rejoicing throughout the ship. It's surely a day to remember. We all thank God for our safety."
Serving on this ship, I think, was one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It was the Mighty A. Somebody in some PR department called it Lucky A. We weren't lucky, we were good.
USS Alabama crew members,
You have felt this ship's decks roll with the sea. You have smelled bread baking in her ovens. You have heard the waves crashing against her bow. You have given this ship her life, and this ship in turn has given you her steel.